Welcome back. We're talking about the China International Import Expo in Shanghai. China is telling the world that it's open for business, and thousands of companies have flocked to the country and its rapidly growing consumer market. Still with us, Chen Chenchen, the Deputy Director of Macroeconomics at Renmin University. Rui Ma is a contributor and advisor to pandaily.com. Zekarias Amsalu is founder and managing director of Ibex Frontier, and Philippe Monnier is an international business executive. And Philippe, why don't we start with you? A number of challenges for innovators and, of course, global firms who want to go into China. President Xi kind of addressed some of those issues. Let's listen to a bit of sound, and then I want to ask you a question on the backside of this.
China will respect international business rules and practices and provide equal treatment to all types of businesses registered in China. We will protect the lawful rights and interests of foreign companies and be resolute in inflicting in a law-abiding manner punishment for violations of the lawful rights and interests of foreign investors, particularly international property rights infringement. We will enhance the credibility and efficiency of IP examination.
So are those comforting words for firms that want to come to China?
Yes. You know, what really matters is not so much the statement or the intention of a politician. What really matters for the private sector is the reality. But we have to realize that the world has changed. We are no longer in the situation whereby all the innovation take place in the West on China, or Chinese company copy sometimes illegally those innovation. Now in China, there are, of course, very strong companies, very innovative companies like Alibaba, Tencent, Baidu, and so on. And sometimes those companies, when they want to export their innovation to, let's say, Europe, I'm thinking, for instance, about the mobile cashless payment. They face regulatory difficulties in Europe. So in a way, China has to make some progress in opening up, and I hope they will do it. But at the same time, Europe and the West also has to make important progresses in opening up to Chinese companies.
But you work with a firm, you're on a board that does business in China. What are some of the steps that you'd like to see taken moving forward?
I think that the issue that we face with China are well known. Not myself in particular, but in general. Sometimes you are forced to have joint venture. Sometimes you have a forced transfer of technology. So this is things which can be improved in China, at least to give a better impression to the potential foreign direct investors in China.
Chen Chen, this expo, of course, coming at a time of increased trade tensions between the United States and China, the U.S. not sending a delegation. Is the door going to be closed to them? I mean, these are potential openings for other companies, other countries. Is the United States missing out?
Well, I don't think that's a very precise description. Because even although the White House didn't send an official delegation, but President Trump himself said he's in full support of the presence of American enterprises at the expo. So if you look at the participation of the expo enterprises, actually nearly 200 American enterprises are in Shanghai to attend. Including some high-end equipment maker, including airplane maker Boeing company, and also some other internet giants. And these companies actually, they explicitly say that they actually want to see the expo as a new start to continue their strategic investment in the Chinese market, given their past 4 decades participation in China. So that's one of the reasons I don't think that's a precise description. And on the other hand, actually, China still sticks to the belief that if it wants to find a solution of sustainable growth, it actually needs to embrace greater the global economy. So that's why it keeps lowering the import tariffs. But given the ongoing trade tensions, I do believe that China has been forced into such a situation in which it has to embrace rest parts of the world, especially countries along the Belt and Road. So actually, it's kind of passive situation. So no one is sure how long this trade dispute is going to last. But if that really gets more and more serious, I think people will have the impression that now the U.S. is really out of the game, Mike.
Well, Rui Ma, let me ask you about the fear of being out of the game. I mean, a lot of soybean farmers in the Midwest, that's been one of their concerns, that China is now going to get their soybeans from other countries, and perhaps that market that they once had will go away. I just spoke to the governor of Kentucky, who's there in Shanghai, trying to keep this relationship going at the subnational level, because he's concerned that they can turn the page. Is that a concern that you're hearing in the Silicon Valley as well, that perhaps China will look elsewhere as this trade war continues?
No, I don't think that's much of a fear in Silicon Valley, actually, and that's just because I think of the nature of technology companies. For the most part, the large internet companies who, already have a strategy in China are going to, I think, continue down that path and are actively, protecting their business there. So, for example, this week is actually Wuzhen Internet Conference as well, one of the largest, government-sponsored internet conferences in China, and Qualcomm is there. Not all of the large not all of the large technology companies from Silicon Valley are represented, but you see a good amount. And in terms of companies that have historically maybe not have had super active businesses in China, such as some, Google, Facebook, or whatever, they have, I think, made announcements on their strategies, and some of those may not include actively expanding their business footprint there, but actively nurturing their existing business is definitely part of it. I think in terms of, how the trade war has affected Silicon Valley, honestly, not very much at all. The same issues exist and the same opportunities exist.
Philippe, let me ask you this. Do other companies and countries see an opening, perhaps, where they can expand their marketplace because of the trade tensions between the United States and China?
Do you know, there are still a lot of obstacles in China, and I'm sure that China will make further progress. But I would like to put this into international perspective. We also have to look in detail at every sector, because there are very, very big differences from sector to sector. And let me take one example. This is the example of the elevator industry. It is a sector which is not very well known, but this sector has a lot of innovation. In this sector, you have some European norm, which became the global technical norms. And then most countries have adopted those global norms, except two major countries, which is USA and Japan. So if you want to sell an elevator in Japan, you have to design a fully different product, which is extremely expensive. And as a consequence, the global elevator company, they are not selling in Japan standard products, and they're even not present in Japan, with one exception. On the other side, in China, China has adopted the global norms. And then all the global elevator players, they are present in China, competing among themselves, competing against Chinese local companies. So my conclusion is that we should not underestimate the relative openness of the Chinese market, even though there is still some progress to be made.
Interesting. Zekarias, what about China and Africa? The trade's increased considerably. Do they see an opening, perhaps, given the fact that there's this dispute going on between the United States and China?
Yes, definitely there is an opportunity. For example, if you look into the Ethiopian Commodity Exchange, they have just added soybeans into their traded agricultural product. So African countries are looking into this market opportunity coming from the trade dispute, can take advantage of it, but capacity may be another issue. If you look into Brazil and Argentina, they may fill the gap. But African countries, they need to increase their capacity. logistical efficiency, and also they need to have a long-term investment in sustaining this market opportunity to be global players.
Rui Ma, it's interesting you're there in the Silicon Valley. Of course, that's the hub of innovation, but I was in Hangzhou a couple of years ago. It's become kind of the Silicon Valley of China, and there's more than one, obviously. Talk to me about China and this rivalry between the United States when it comes to that type of enterprise.
Yeah, in terms of tech, the Chinese government has obviously put a lot of resources to use. And, you know, I think some of the things that has been done to prop up China's status in terms of tech innovation is, of course, there's lots of programs, including substantial subsidies, trying to attract foreign and returning talent back to China to create specifically innovative startups. There's also, I think, announced this week, what I think is maybe really interesting is so-called an R&D board. I'm not sure exactly what the English translation is going to be, but basically potentially a new avenue for capital raising on the Chinese capital markets for businesses focused on research and development. So businesses that are maybe not even monetizing very well yet, but are at the forefront of, you know, tech research. And that's something that President Xi announced officially. It's been in the works, but it was announced officially as part of this expo. So I think that's really interesting and may, I don't know, attract even more enterprises to crop up in China, or maybe even foreign entrepreneurs to move there.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to watch. I want to thank all of you for joining us. It's been a pleasure. And that's all the time we have, but the conversation, of course, continues online. Chat with us about this or any other show on Twitter. We're at CGTN America, or visit us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/CGTN America. I'm Mike Walter in Washington, D.C. Thanks for being with us.